The moment she said it so casually, like it meant nothing, was the moment something inside me quietly broke. Her voice didn't shake. Her eyes didn't even blink. And somehow, that made it worse. My name is Nolan Prescott, and until that night in our apartment in Scottsdale, Arizona, I believed I understood the woman I had been building a future with. Her name was Sloane Harrington. She was composed, intelligent, and the kind of person people described as calm under pressure. But what I didn't realize was that calm doesn't always mean honest. Sometimes it just means practiced. It started with something small. It always does. Late replies, a shift in tone, the way she began guarding her phone, not dramatically, but just enough to make me question myself before I question her. And that was the first mistake. I questioned myself, not her. I told myself she was stressed from work at Harrington and Company. I told myself her long hours were just part of climbing the corporate ladder. I told myself trust meant silence. And for a while that lie worked, until it didn't. The first real crack came on a Thursday evening. She came home later than usual, but not late enough to justify suspicion on its own. What stood out was her energy. She wasn't tired. She wasn't drained. She was lighter, like she had just stepped out of a completely different life before walking back into ours. I noticed it, but I didn't say anything. Not yet, because once you say something, you can't take it back. And I wasn't ready to lose the version of her I still believed in. Days passed, then weeks. The pattern became clearer. Her late meetings always seemed to fall on the same days. Tuesdays, Fridays, and sometimes Sunday afternoons, which she casually labeled as team check-ins. That was the moment logic started slipping, because no serious firm schedules Sunday check-ins unless something is wrong. But again, I stayed quiet, because silence is easier than confrontation when you're afraid of the answer. Then one night, everything aligned. She forgot something, her laptop, and she asked me to bring it to her office. It was the first time in months I had a reason to step into her world instead of just hearing about it. When I got there, the building was nearly empty. Lights dimmed, reception quiet, and her office dark. That didn't make sense. I called her. No answer. I waited. 10 minutes. 15. Then I stepped outside, and that's when I saw her. Not alone. She was standing near the parking structure, leaning slightly closer to a man I had never seen before. They weren't touching. Not technically, but proximity tells its own story. The way she laughed wasn't the laugh she used with me. It was softer, warmer, less controlled. And in that moment, something inside me didn't shatter. It clarified, because confusion is loud, but clarity is quiet. I didn't walk up to them. I didn't create a scene. I simply watched, because sometimes the truth reveals itself best when you don't interrupt it. After a few minutes, they parted. She walked back toward the building, and I stepped aside before she could see me. I left the laptop at reception, and I went home. That drive was silent. Not angry, not emotional, just still, because I wasn't processing betrayal yet. I was processing reality. When she came home later that night, everything felt staged. Her tone, her explanation, her casual apology for missing my call, and I realized something terrifying. She had no idea I knew, which meant this wasn't new. This was practiced. The next morning, I made a decision. Not a dramatic one, a precise one. I started paying attention, not to what she said, but to what she avoided saying. Over the next 2 weeks, the pattern became undeniable. The same name appeared in passing conversations. Carter mentioned this. Carter handled that client. Carter thinks the team should shift direction. It was always subtle, always framed professionally. But repetition has weight, and eventually, it becomes impossible to ignore. Then came the moment everything surfaced. We were sitting across from each other at dinner. No tensión, no argument, just a normal evening. And out of nowhere, she said it. I think I've been needing a little more attention lately. I didn't react immediately, because I wanted her to keep going. She continued, "It's not your fault. It's just sometimes people need different things at different times." That sentence was carefully constructed. Neutral, non accusatory, safe, and yet it carried something underneath. I looked at her, really looked at her, and asked one simple question. Are you getting that attention somewhere else? There was a pause. Not long, but long enough. And then she said it. Yes, No hosetashin. No apology. Just truth. Clean. Direct. Controlled. And that's when I understood everything. It wasn't a mistake. It wasn't confusion. It was a decision. Before we go further, pause for a second. If you were sitting in my position, hearing that answer without emotion or regret, would you ask more questions, or would you already know enough? I didn't raise my voice. I didn't argue, because arguments are for uncertainty, and there was none left. I asked one more thing. Who is he? She met my eyes. Carter Whitfield. The name landed exactly where I expected it to. Familiar. Predictable. And suddenly, every late night, every Sunday check-in, every shift in her energy made perfect sense. What does extra attention mean? I asked. She didn't flinch. It means he listens. It means he notices things. It means I don't feel like I have to ask. That answer was more revealing than any confession, because it wasn't about him. It was about how she justified it to herself. I nodded slowly, not in agreement, but in understanding, because once you understand someone's reasoning, their actions stop feeling random. They start feeling inevitable. And inevitability is harder to fight than betrayal. I see, I said quietly. And that was the moment the dynamic shifted. Not loudly, not dramatically, but completely. Because she expected resistance. She expected emotion. She expected something she could respond to. Instead, I gave her nothing. And nothing is difficult to argue with. The next few days were strangely calm. We didn't pretend everything was fine. But we also didn't explode. We existed in a kind of suspended reality. Two people who knew the truth but hadn't yet decided what to do with it. Then, on a Monday morning, I made my move. Ipek to bake. Not everything. Just enough. Because I wasn't leaving in anger. I was leaving with clarity. She watched me from the doorway. No panique. No attempt to stop me. Just observation. Is this really it? She asked. I paused, looked at her one last time, and said something I hadn't fully understood until that moment. It was over the day you needed someone else to feel seen. There was no argument after that, because there was nothing left to argue about. Weeks passed. Life adjusted. Not instantly, not easily, but steadily. And here's the part people don't talk about enough. The absence of chaos can feel unfamiliar at first, but eventually it starts to feel like peace. I didn't check her social media. I didn't ask mutual friends for updates, because closure isn't something someone else gives you. It's something you decide to accept. One evening, months later, I ran into someone from her firm at a networking event. We exchanged polite conversation, and eventually, her name came up. She and Carter didn't last, he said casually. Office situations rarely do. I nodded, not surprised, because relationships built in secrecy often struggle in daylight. But here's the important part. That information didn't change anything for me. It didn't feel like victory. It didn't feel like validation. It just felt irrelevant. And that's how I knew I had moved on. Not because I forgot, but because it no longer mattered. Before we close this story, think about this for a moment. When someone says they need extra attention, are they asking for connection, or are they already choosing distance? Because sometimes the words people use aren't explanations. They're justifications. And learning the difference can change everything.